we have to move on. Thanks for joining back in. And once more, I will do the introduction first in English and then in German. And it is a great pleasure to have Lauren Muney here, not only because she's a famous silhouette artist and she's doing a project here in Lauresham, the so-called Lauresham Faces, but also because she's involved for a couple of years now, not only in ALHFAM per se, but also in the so-called STP committee, and she will comment on that, what that committee is following up on, what its purpose is, and basically also how we can preserve skills acquired in these open air sites, and how we even teach people. But this is also relevant for experimental archaeology, and Eva Mergen will also talk about that later. Yes, so it's great to have you here, and we're really looking forward to your talk. Lauren Muney ist nicht nur eine bekannte Silhouettenkünstlerin aus den Vereinigten Staaten, die auch hier in Lauresham ein Projekt macht, sondern letzten Endes auch ein Mitglied von ALHFAM, was man im Grunde so als eine Art Parallelorganisation auch zu dem, was wir als EXARC kennen, in den Vereinigten Staaten verstehen können, mit einem stärkeren Fokus auch noch in Living History Museums und Farms. Und sie ist dort in dem STP-Komitee aktiv, ich bin dort auch aktiv, und sie hat das mitentwickelt, mitentworfen, und letzten Endes geht es da nicht nur um die Erhaltung, sondern auch um das Training von Fertigkeiten, die in diesen Freilichtprojekten eben teilweise über 10, 20, 30 Jahre schon existieren. Und da geht es eben darum, die dann auch für den oder die nachfolgende Person und eben auch für die Wissenschaft in Wert zu setzen. Also freuen wir uns, dass sie da ist, und herzlichen Dank. All right.
Thank you, Klaus. Moment. Oh. As it said, I'm going to be speaking about preservations of skills and training on living history and open air museums. And this is also a reminder to all of us who are teaching and training skills of all kind. As Klaus kindly said, I am a historic artist who does work in the modern scale in modern events, but also at living history museums. And before I go on, I should explain, living history museums are slightly different than an open air archaeological museum, or even some open air museums in Europe. Living history museums might present sometimes slightly nostalgic, often story created, featuring regional areas and histories in the United States and in Canada, even in Australia. Sometimes whole buildings from other parts of a small region are moved to an area and create a village. Sometimes a village just creates a time period, and sometimes the village meanders through time of that area. So it's important to note that some of the sites that I'm talking about are not similar to Lauresham, except when there are the reenactors, the interpreters in costume. Those are more like what I'm talking about. As you can see on Lauresham and even in traditional museums, talent and staff are working and experiencing out on site. However, skills and knowledge are being lost or soon to be lost through retiring museum professionals, or even the loss of the last generations of practitioners. And as we just saw in the last couple of weeks, last couple of years, we've had pandemic issues, retirements, movement of workplaces, or even loss of salaried jobs. So we must remember to always place these skills into new hands. We must learn to take the skills and knowledge as curators of material culture. And many of you are in museums, and maybe you're not. Material culture are the objects that are used to present the past. But we need to use those skills of curators of material culture and apply it to the business of preserving intangible culture of skills. So the intangible culture of skills, as you're on a UNESCO World Heritage Museum Center, even though the World Heritage Museum is just a short ways away, it's about transmitting the wealth of knowledge and skills from one generation to the next. It's not about monuments and collections of objects. And most people who are presenting museums, they forget because they're only looking at the object, and without intending to offend people who are in academia, it's not just about the objects, it's about what you're presenting here in Lauresham and in the Anglo-Saxon project, the ideas beyond what the objects are. So we must have a continuous teaching and transfer of living history and interpretive skills among staff to instill the cultural heritage of your site and the staff knowledge. It's hard to see. I was going to say our test study case is ALHFAM, which is known as the Association for Living History, Farm and Agricultural Museums. It is really a cluster of many people who bring history to life. It could be interpreters, teachers, museums, historic houses, where it's one building and not several buildings. We even have historic schoolhouses. Reenactors are also included in this association. And as you can see, it shares practical knowledge and skills among those who make history relevant to contemporary lives. So most of our practitioners take history and interpret it to modern people in the way that modern people can understand. It's not just studying the past, it's connecting the past to the present, so there's a deep understanding of who we are at moving forward. So in the skill, I feel so sad that some of the words are cut off, so I'll tell you what it says. ALHFAM's Skills Training and Preservation Initiative, and I was one of the co-producers of this initiative, is to start off teaching people to think about skills. It is the most important thing and the most difficult to notice what is already ingrained inside you. You do not notice what is you've been doing every moment of every day. So our first step is to teach somebody to notice what a skill is, to think about skills and to ask what skills are needed to do a project or even to start a group action. So train people in person on skills. We have in ALHFAM local, regional, and international opportunities. We have local events, regional events that would be essentially half of Germany, for example, would be a region, or the entirety of Germany, or international. Our conferences are open to all people who join. We have in ALHFAM, we have members in Europe, United States, Canada, Iceland, Estonia, Serbia, and now we're starting to get people in Australia. We also are starting with connecting with skills training partners for learning opportunities, which are other organizations, commercial or nonprofit, that have deep skills. One of our partners in ALHFAM is an organization called Tillers International. They teach rural skills such as plowing, blacksmithing, ironwork, and all of these in the United States. Skills are actually funding. Their main purpose is to go overseas to developing countries and to teach them how to use skills better. We also have create a library of skills, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And just before the pandemic, we were starting to think about virtual training, and then the pandemic happened. So we're really right on schedule with figuring out how to make a 360 view of training opportunities. So the important thing that we ask is, what happens if one of your most important people on site, let's say it's Klaus, was abducted by aliens? That's a fun way of saying, what happens if somehow Klaus leaves this site and isn't available, or other museum sites lose their major people? Who would teach that skill that Klaus knew, the small concepts that he doesn't even know that he remembers, but needs to be able to give to the other people that live on a site and also transmit to the community. So what happens if somebody gets abducted by aliens? How would the next skill practitioners go on? We must ask which skills. We put them into several categories. We call it brain and knowledge skills, which include curation, accession, collection, preservation, frontline interaction with the visitors, data collection, data management, museum management, and also hand or physical skills, which include farming, trade, domestic, animal husbandry, and other skills. There are more skills that go on top of that. One of them could be, for instance, we were working with the technology here. So technological can also even go into those. So all skills that are in presenting history or running a living history museum. We had a 2018 survey where we asked ALHFAM members, would they attend more conferences if skills were taught via virtual workshops? They said that they would go to virtual workshops regionally up to 2 hours via trusted partner organizations. And this is in addition to our conferences. So to be able to have more opportunities for skill training was very important. And our highest in demand skills were historic skills, demonstrating skills, trades, agriculture, management of volunteers, and interpretive planning and instruction. That's a skill that is usually not thought of as something that is a skill. It's thought of something that's academic, but it's actually a wider view. I've got an example of one of our conferences. This is the Mid-Atlantic of the United States. The conference was in New Jersey. And we had, so when we have a region in ALHFAM, our region, our Mid-Atlantic region is about 8 states. Is it 8 states, Eva? Yeah, it's about 8 states. It's a very large area in the United States. For this special conference for teaching skills, we had multiple sites for our conference within a 45-minute drive. We had 3-hour skill sessions, which was about half day each. Participants could stay at one site or change different sites. The different sites hosted the evening activities. So there was a lot of ideas that were flowing through. It wasn't just created by one organization. And ALHFAM meeting was also presented with another association meeting. So there were 2 different organizations meeting in the same place. This form of conference yielded clearer information and intimacy for multiple topics. An example of one of the skills was people learned how to make scrapple, which is everything but the oink in a pig. So it's a dish that's eaten in a certain region of Pennsylvania and New Jersey where it's offal. What is do you have a term for offal? All of the parts of the pig that you normally remove before serving to regular people, we call it offal, O-F-F-A-L. Do you have a word for that?
We call them more Kesselfleisch, the ones you wouldn't
That's it.
pick for a particular dish.
They use all of that.
Yeah, but they would, yeah.
Yeah, so, and it's a very unusual skill to be able to do that. And we had an entire session on that. We had Barb Corson, who's a retired veterinarian. She gave a cow and sheep health workshop. It is very rare to see a cow and sheep health workshop given in public. It's normally reserved for your specialists or maybe a manager of a site, but they were teaching it to everyone. So everybody would have an overview of this concept if they wanted to take this workshop. Another example we had for a skills conference was in Texas. This is in Grapevine, Texas, which is near the city of Dallas. They created an entirely new system of training skills. Instead of making an opening for people to apply, they invited the people they wanted to teach certain skills. They had multiple sites within only 5-minute drive. And it was only 45-minute sessions. So it was many sessions going on at the same time, but there was absolutely no PowerPoint. So all the sessions had to be done hands-on and with handouts, and that's very rare for a conference these days. And all social activities were actually done living history. So this created a broader amount of skills and gives participants more chances to pursue those brief skills later. Bigger, small taste they can pursue later because they only had 45-minute sessions. An example was the company Workhouse Farm gave harnessing and driving lessons. They were basic and advanced. On ALHFAM's website, here's an example of our Skills Training and Preservation Resource Center. We have an entire menu where we have the training and workshop calendar, our skill clip library, which I'll talk to you about later, to how to make skill clips, and even an interface on our skill and knowledge base. We have 50 years of papers that are available online through a database, and all members can go to that database and look up any of the papers, as Lauresham has their immensus. Papers. We are able to do that all online through our membership. And this isn't a commercial for ALHFAM. I'm just explaining the organization. To explain what skill clips are short video lessons offered to carry forward precise knowledge of skills. Though we have a library of skills and training, we also encourage high quality living history training, which includes on-the-job training, apprenticeships, in-house workshops and clinics. And each site should have a quality skills video for continuous learning on their own site. We do advocate that. That's as if Klaus would have an continuous training with a high quality video if he needs it for his own skills or even to pass on. This is where I'm going to be showing you one of our skills training. This is Ed Schultz in Colonial Williamsburg in Virginia. And if you have seen the flax display that was over in front of the weaving house, he is going to explain briefly how to break flax, and he does it in a very clear, clean, precise manner with detail without getting too overly involved. Thank you.
I'm Ed Schultz from Colonial Williamsburg, and I'm going to show you how to hackle flax. This flax has already been broken and scutched, and so what we need to do is straighten out these fibers and get out some of the trash. I like to start from the top of the plant. See the fuzzy stuff right there? That's where the seeds were. And you pass through these hackles. Notice that technique right there. That's one way to get it started when you have a lot of resistance. Now, eventually, what I'm going to do is a faster method is like this. If you notice here, it's a flip like that, and then you pull through. You can work it way. I'm only working one end. Look at the difference right there from right there. All right, as I continue, what I'll do then is once I have that satisfactory, I'll pass the other end through it, working my way towards the center. So I have the full length hackle. See it transforming there. All right, now what I'm going to do is pass it through a smaller hackle as well. Then I flip it around. I'll do the other side. Then the smallest hackle right here. That one I don't really need too much in. This is what we're after right here. It needs to be done just a little bit more right in there. That's how I'm Med Schultz, and that's how you hackle flax.
Go back to your
Yes.
presentation. That example of a skill clip is only an ALHFAM presentation. So he's essentially teaching other living history practitioners how to do a skill that he wouldn't be around to give. So normally, if you were to come to a conference, you would meet Ed, and you might have to spend a lot of money to get there, or your schedule wouldn't allow. These skill clips allow you to learn from our best practitioners. Ed is highly regarded by his own very famous museum, as well as in ALHFAM. And by having a high quality skills presentation, these are all volunteer videos, volunteer submitted. He is teaching the rest of the organizations that each of those people then present to the public. So we have an ongoing presentation of skills and interpretation going through throughout the centuries. And we even classify our skills for location, region, and era. So if you were looking for a particular skill clip, you can look at the subject, era, location, because what you might do in Virginia might be different in another area. And you can contrast and compare if you'd like. So in conclusion, we are looking to expand helping people make skills with skill-based regional opportunities, skills-based learning with partner organizations. We are creating most endangered skills workshops or important workshops, master classes. We often have classes with people like Ed to give his knowledge. He's run Historic Farmer Boot Camp, where you learn directly from him. Hands-on workshop hosted by specific member sites. We have a skill clip library full of skill videos, and we're creating online workshops. In fact, Klaus is going to be giving an online workshop on how to make a oxen collar, a 3-pad oxen collar. He'll be doing that online for ALHFAM in August. So these skills are, each museum and living history museum functions as a treasure chest of skills. And there are our collective wisdom. We have to have video conferences and workshops to teach these skills before we lose the experts. We have an American phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, but maybe it takes a whole world to remember skills. So we know that no one lives forever or stays at a site forever. So we encourage everyone to preserve this knowledge and skills of the past and a valuable staff. So capture the intangible heritage contained at your site. And if you want to learn more about ALHFAM, the website is here. We're on Instagram at ALHFAM, and myself, that's my website, silhouettesbyhand.com, and I'm on Instagram at silhouettesbyhand. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, so much. And it's one other example of really showing how much potential there is in these kinds of different types of open air museums and the living history farms whatsoever. So now we're at the point that we talk about skills, and skills is what we need to do, skills and experience to do proper experimental archaeology. But first, the floor is open for questions. Hat jemand Fragen? Mark.
I hope this doesn't sound like a stupid question, but do you find instruction any more effective when someone's in serious custody?
The question, in case anybody hasn't heard, is interpretation or instruction? Interpretation is different than instruction. Do you have a meaning that you would like to choose?
However you find it useful to answer.
Many sites do like is done here at Lauresham, where the staff is in modern day clothing and they're presenting a modern view. Other sites do one of two things. They're in period clothing, so the impression of the period comes through, but they present in what's called the third person, which is they don't talk about I do this, and they think about it from a past perspective. They say modern perspective, but they show all of the accoutrement of being in period, and it helps many of the I'm going to use the North American, Canadian, Australian interaction because it helps the visitor feel like they're back in the past, and it's less academic and more getting into the feeling. Sometimes that goes to nostalgia, which isn't good because then people can put on their own, some visitors can put on their own ideas of what the history means. And then there's also in costume, what's called first person, which that interpreter creates a persona and speaks in a dialect. If a person takes out a camera, if a guest takes out a camera, doesn't know what a camera is, there's an interaction like that is immersive for the guest. Sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's more of an entertainment. So it all depends on the mission of the museum. And some museums change their mission as needs change, but they might not change their theme or era. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any further questions also from the audience online? Yes.
Yes, you preserve knowledge and skills with electronic material, with videos, something like that. Do you think about how to preserve these electronic data for the future?
We're doing our best. At the moment, we can't determine what the future of digital technology will be. Currently, our skills library is on Vimeo, and I researched Vimeo, the company Vimeo, and it seems to have a very good reputation, and it seems to be forward thinking. And it fly by night, inexpensive companies, you might lose your entire library. Many sites keep a backup of what they give to us, but the most we can do is go on what technology is, and then really teaching. So Klaus teaching you, you're preserving that and you're going on. So maybe the digital library is almost like a backup to what he can teach you. And that's the most important thing. It's truly person to person. Doing video is just a conduit for a bit more people, but that's the real connection that you have to preserve. And that's the one thing that's very important. And that's why preserving skills is about getting together. So the pandemic was very hard for people, not who just write papers, but to use oral teaching and visual teaching, looking at it up close, not just looking at it on a screen. Am I answering a question? I tend to get very big okay.
I mean, I think it's a future problem, showing all those data.
It will be, but our first thing is to get people to understand that there are skills that have to be put on. That's a very hard thing to do. Thank you, Klaus.
Are there any further questions? If not, we'll let some fresh air in and resume in 3 minutes.